At some point in the last 10 years, we've gone from keeping things to ourselves to oversharing in every way imaginable, from the day-to-day what's on your mind of social media, to even in the last 4 or 5 years sharing even more about our mental health and our personal well-being, with the initial "it's good to share" philosophy being taken way too far. We've forgotten that privacy is a virtue, and my work with clients over the last few years has taught the importance of keeping things to yourself, especially if it's damage and wounding and trauma, and not sharing it with all of your friends and family members. If you're working through something painful from childhood, for example, you don't need to go and have a direct conversation with your mother, your father, your auntie, your uncle, and all of your extended family. You don't need to take up all of your friendly conversations with your best friend or your social circle on the weekend. In regards to your trauma healing process, it's important for you to be able to share with some people, but I want you to know the difference between sharing with everyone and sharing with those people who are truly safe and truly worthwhile to share your inner world with. Privacy is a virtue. Oversharing at its simplest form is sharing all of the trivialities of your life on social media with a quick post about your political opinions, what you had for breakfast, and what you think about the latest meme or trending piece of news. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the oversharing when you're going into the gym or you're showing up at work and you're bringing through elements of your personal mental well-being, or maybe elements of your spiritual life, in inappropriate contexts with inappropriate people. Maybe you're someone who needs to take inspiration from today's questioner and look at this on the screen, who literally wrote non-disclosure agreements for themselves. They said they needed to keep themselves to themselves, and they printed it out and signed it, and only share with close friends, a therapist, and a psychiatrist. A really extreme perspective, but that's what inspired today's video, this idea of a non-disclosure agreement, printed and signed. Under no conditions shall I talk about my inner child healing, shall I yet again talk about my meditative process, or even mentioning a bit too often the kinds of books that you're reading, or going too deep into your personal philosophy of why we all need to abandon mainstream thinking and do the next alternative healing trend. It's a nuanced point. I want you to be able to feel like you're not being a fake person. I don't want you to feel like with your colleagues and your friends that you're not being yourself, but there is a degree to which the persona, and especially the social persona, is a very useful, healthy, and arguably underutilized function in any healthy adult psychic realm. You want to be able to wear a mask in certain contexts, and you want to also be able to keep your inner self for the people in your inner circle. But what about when it is just your inner circle? I'm talking your partner, your husband, your wife, or your girlfriend or boyfriend, maybe your children, if they're at an age where they can understand, not before the age of maybe about 6 or 7. Sometimes you could say mommy or daddy is tired, and that's as far as you need to take it. But let's say your prepubescent teenage or adult children, or maybe your close friend group in regards to business colleagues who you're particularly close to, or personal friends from, your deep connections. How much should you share with them? Honest answer, I don't think you should share all that much if you're serious about self-integration, at least as a general piece of advice. Some people who are going to be watching this video are way too introverted and they're really hermit-like. But most people that I've worked with in one-to-one situations have at least one close friend or one close family member who they share a lot of their inner process with. There's somebody who they feel like they can be themselves with, and at a certain moment in the healing journey, maybe 6 months deep, 12 months deep, or 2 years deep into your own self-integration process, you actually start to limit your ability to enjoy and enhance the friendship or the family connection because you become narcissistically self-absorbed in your own healing process. And that's a controversial thing to say. I know that my whole channel is built around the idea of inner work and spending thousands of hours alone reading books about all the ways that you've been wounded and all the ways that you could heal. But crucially, I'm sharing it with you as a teacher. I'm taking the time for myself in my own personal practice and private study, and those are my major lanes of expression. There are a few people in my life that I share with more intimately, but I'm definitely not talking about any of this at the gym, which is probably my most social space. In fact, I'm almost a little bit embarrassed when people ask me what I do, not of the work that I actually do, but I know that on the third or the fourth sentence when I've said, I do therapy things and coaching things and I do some online teaching, they say, oh, do you do YouTube? And I say, yes, I do YouTube. And I always dread the moment where someone gets their phone and it's like, oh, what's the YouTube? And they search it in, because there's dozens of hours of me talking on the internet for someone that I've only just met and I have no idea what they're going to do with that information. That's why I don't share too much of my personal stories on the internet. I still want privacy. You might notice I don't talk about the super close connections in my life. If you see me over on Instagram, it's just me. It's not people who are close to me. And there's a reason for that. As you become more and more visible in the outer world, the need for privacy becomes greater and greater. But it's not even about your adult identity. This is where it's important. And I'm glad that you're still here in this video. It's about the privacy needs of your inner child. If you're really tapped in with your inner child and what they need to feel safe and secure, you will encounter a moment on the healing journey where they need to be private. Not sharing everything they need to share with everyone, because this is a common experience. Sometimes you have a moment where maybe you needed to perform a certain piece of music in front of family and friends, or somebody wanted you to show off your awards or your certificates or something that you've done at school, and you didn't want to as a child. You want to be left alone in your room or left alone playing. Or maybe there was a moment where you had to share something in class and you just wanted to be kind of left to your own devices. You didn't want to be sharing so much. And of course, socially speaking, we're rewarded for extroversion. Somebody who's outgoing and talkative is usually the one who's getting the most social props and dating success and networking opportunities. There's a lot of reward for extroversion, a lot of reward for publicity, but if you're really tapped in between the age of like 6 to 16, there are going to be these windows of unexpressed pain, maybe at a very small degree, but in some people that I've worked with a very large degree, where they were almost paraded around on the psychological, metaphorical public stage, and their inner child doesn't like it. They don't want to be so public. And then if you're somebody who's in their adult life, someone who's in between late 20s, anywhere further than that, you've also had the experience of going through adolescence and having an adult life with access to social media, and we're prompted through the literal phrase of what's on your mind. I don't know if that's a Facebook or a Twitter thing, but that particular prompt has been subconsciously reinforced through years and years of social media participation, and we eventually just get caught in this very subconscious loop of needing to share everything on the inside. So you start your healing journey, and surprise, surprise, you dedicate your Instagram or your Twitter to all the things that you're learning about healing, and you just end up oversharing. And it's not safe for your inner child if you're really tapped in. This is a moment where if you've seen any of my active imagination videos, both on YouTube and inside of the Shadow Work Library, my course where I demonstrate all of these techniques, I nonetheless had a moment where I was trying to bring my inner child through on camera. And 3 different times when I've tried to do this, I've got the strong message of, no, I don't want to be shown on the internet. I don't want strangers on the internet. I know that you're watching it. Maybe you've seen me for months and months, but there's so many people out there. Why should I bring a very vulnerable and very special part of myself for the whole world to see? Just be aware of the ways that you're doing that with your own healing process. I'm not saying that you should never talk to someone like today's questioner or the commenter writing the non-disclosure agreements, but just for close friends, therapist, and psychiatrist. Still 3 people, maybe 4 or 5 people, but the right context, the right safe person, and not overextending on vulnerable places that need that privacy, that dark space. If you get wounded and you're throwing up, you don't want to be out in public and everyone sees you. If you're hurt and you've got a bit of a bleeding wound on you, you don't want to be out in public. Sometimes it's appropriate to be in private. It's not desperate and depressed, isolated energy. It's just honoring the socially shunned need for privacy, and it will help in more ways than I can possibly express in one video. I've seen it again and again. You can choose to keep things to yourself. And when you get comfortable keeping things to yourself, and when you get comfortable sharing with only professionals or very emotionally calibrated friends, things start to change. you're not so caught up in the responses and reactions and maybe even the difficult situation where you've accidentally become performative in your healing or in your self-development, and you're posting stories and selfies or long sophisticated captions about your growth and your learnings and the books that you've been reading, and having not actually digested your own food before you regurgitate it onto the internet. Stop oversharing. It's a simple message. I've been there myself. I know it's tempting to want to go and share what you've learned and educate the world, but just make sure that you've assimilated the information, that your inner child is safe, and if you're going to be taking on a teaching or some kind of public-facing persona, make sure you also have the boundaries where your personal life has a degree of privacy. Make sure that you protect things like your address on packages if you're sharing it on social media. Make sure that if you're at a certain scale that you're not checking in at a place where people could find you in a city. Just watch out, and this also extends to your family. Just be careful. Privacy has never been more important. We're in an era of surveillance, and not to get conspiratorial, just to be objectively stating the truth that you never know who is watching. So don't share your deepest and most vulnerable wounds, even if it just looks like it's 10 people liking the post. What about all the people that didn't like it? Just be aware. Just be aware. Listen to that little boy or little girl inside of you and see if they'd like to have their broken wrist paraded around on the playground, or the fact that they've just pooped in their underwear because they've got a stomach bug. You don't need to have that out there. I know that you're going to have some more sophistication in those examples, but the energetics, just pause to look at it. It's good to be private.